Welcome back to the Star Trek Critic, where each episode is analyzed and ripped apart as if I know everything. Today is the second episode of the animated series Yesteryear, where the Enterprise revisits Carl, the Guardian of Forever. The first point is lost, since that stardate was too close to one of our planets is missing. Another point is lost since you can tell the Enterprise is on a plate of dirty glass. I know this is a children's show that revisits the original planets, but they would never just randomly go back in time. It is much more dangerous than going to Talos 4, so minus one more point. The next point is lost for the captain and first officer beaming down together like they're not supposed to. That's why McCoy doesn't recognize them. They're really screwed now. Kirk is so upset he poses like Peter Pan. The next point is lost since they didn't have the protective belt on the surface. And why doesn't Bates have a belt? Scotty's like, what's a Vulcan doing here? Kirk quotes his favorite Who song. Thalen is Star Trek's first Andorian officer. Look closely. The planet doesn't rotate. It is being slid from right to left through a round opening in the stars. Look closely, they were in Orion's path, not Spock. So what happened to Spock's family? He only asked about Spock and Amanda, not Sarek's first wife, or Sybok, or Michael Burnham. Looks like he also has some memory loss, doesn't it? So now Spock and Amanda died. Aww. The other Spock died at age 7. So why this zoom in on Thelis like he was in on it? So it turns out while Kirk and Spock were in the past, the other scientists were looking at Vulcan history and Spock should have gone back in time then, but didn't, so his younger self died. Kirk loves posing like Peter Pan, doesn't he? They put 2 and 2 together. Spock has to go back in time and pose as his own distant cousin. This is why you don't mess with time travel.
His ship. James T. Kirk. 17 separate temporal violations, the biggest file on record.
Man was a menace.
Spock doesn't remember anything. Is that because it was so long ago, or because of the time paradox? We will never know. This is the only Star Trek episode that talks about Vulcan years and days. Spock and Thalos brown-nose each other in a way that only first officers can do. The Andorian gives the Vulcan hand salute, but Kirk just shakes hands with him. Spock's thinking the animated Kirk can't do that hand salute either. Another point is lost for Spock going alone, and another point lost since Vulcan has no moon.
Vulcan has no moon, Miss Uhura.
I'm not surprised, Mr. Spock.
And another point lost for not changing clothes before he went through the portal. Minus 1 point because barely an hour has passed. Spock has gone back in time to restore the future, just like Marty McFly. Now we know why Spock left Vulcan, because Vulcan kids are racist and have horrible clothes. This Saturday morning TV show tells children how to treat racists. Yes! This scene somehow reminds me of Lilo and Stitch. Sarek apologizes for his son's actions. What a crappy dad. Look closely. Spock is wearing his uniform under his robe. Nice attention to detail in a show with a tight budget. And minus 1 point here. If they could afford Mark Leonard to voice Sarek, they could have at least paid Walter Koenig to voice Chekhov for 1 or 2 shows. It turns out Vulcans are polytheists. And here is the first time we see a pet Salak. Although this one is pretty old. One scary constant in the Star Trek universe, clothing futures for kids, is horrifying. Sarek says Spock has to choose a Vulcan way of life or a human way of life. Why can't he do both? And he's lying about them not having wars or crime. If he watched Enterprise, he would know that Vulcans con the humans into doing all their dirty work. And while Sarek tells Spock he can only choose one for life, he stands like Peter Pan too. The voice of Amanda is done by Majel Barrett. The Kazwan is a horrible idea. They send 7-year-old boys out in the desert for 10 days with nothing. This is child abuse. Most kids will end up dead. This must be their logical version of population control. Sarek is putting a lot of pressure on him. Young Spock is nervous, so goes out to the desert early for a practice run. And of course, Spock is following them both. Sarek and Amanda are worried parents. In this scene, Ichaya saves young Spock from the La Mancha, but it bites him. Then adult Spock double pinches the La Mancha to knock him out. Isn't this supposed to cause a time travel paradox when you meet yourself? Older Spock gives some good advice, but Ichaya is not doing so well. Young Spock looks for a doctor while adult Spock sues an old friend. This does turn out to be good training for Spock for next month. The doctor has a nice set of wheels, doesn't he? Adult Spock gives a shout out to younger Spock. Unfortunately, Ichaya is past saving. He can be put out of his misery or live in pain for the rest of his life. Young Spock chooses putting Achaya down. This show gets an A+ in teaching young kids how to handle the death of a loved pet. Spock chooses the Vulcan way of life. Sarek arranges to bring Achaya back from the mountains to have him turned into a rug. And young Spock is going to practice the Vulcan neck pinch on his bratty classmates. And Spock says goodbye to his parents before going back to the time portal. One thing you never learn is how do they find the portal on the other side to go back through. And Achaya didn't die the last time, so history has been changed. Look closely, in this shot the planet is not rotating, so -1 more point. And even the animated series ends with the traditional Spock and McCoy bickering. Except this time, Spock makes a joke. Yesteryear, a children's show about coping with the death of a pet, gets a score of 89%. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to check out my other videos and playlists. Click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I will see you again soon.